The hospital bracelet was still warm on Seraphina's wrist when her husband threw her and their newborn twins into the December snow. 2 days earlier, she had been the happiest woman alive, cradling her babies in the maternity ward. Now she stood barefoot on the frozen doorstep, watching the man she loved slam the door in her face. "Please, Harlan," she whispered through chattering teeth, pressing the crying infants closer to her chest. "They're your children." But the lock clicked shut with finality, leaving only the howling wind and her mother-in-law's satisfied smile through the window. Have you ever trusted the wrong voice? Have you ever destroyed something beautiful because fear convinced you it wasn't real? Have you ever realized too late that the person you pushed away was your greatest blessing? This is the story of a man who had everything but chose pride over love. A woman who walked away from billions to marry for love, only to be thrown away like trash. The moment when judgment, suspicion, and ego destroy a family in one devastating choice. Harlan Cross was a successful architect, but he wasn't wealthy. Not by his mother's standards, not compared to the elite circles she desperately wanted him to join. So when Seraphina had refused to sign a prenup, when she'd been secretive about her past, when she'd insisted on a simple courthouse wedding, his mother's whispers had found fertile ground. For months, Victoria Cross had been planting seeds of doubt. Every family dinner became an opportunity to point out inconsistencies. "Don't you think it's strange how she never talks about her childhood, darling?" she'd say. "And those phone calls she ends when you walk in the room. What kind of wife has secrets from her husband?" The poison dripped slowly, steadily. "She saw you coming, Harlan. A good man with a promising career. 2 babies will guarantee she never has to work again." Standing in that hospital room just hours after the birth, exhausted and overwhelmed, Harlan had looked at his wife, really looked at her, and for the first time his mother's doubts felt like certainties. The woman who had loved him unconditionally suddenly seemed like a stranger. Every loving gesture felt calculated. Every smile felt like manipulation. That doubt became certainty. That certainty became rage. And that rage led to the most catastrophic mistake of his life. What Harlan didn't know that night would haunt him forever. Because the woman he threw into the snow wasn't just a devoted wife. She was an heiress worth billions. The Vale fortune. Old money. The kind of wealth that could have funded his mother's wildest social climbing dreams for 100 lifetimes. She had given up everything to work as a nurse in their small town, walking away from a charitable empire that spanned 6 continents. She had chosen love over luxury, authenticity over ease, hoping to find someone who would see her heart before her inheritance. And she thought she had found that in Harlan. She was wrong. By the time he figured it out, it was already too late. The woman who could have given him the world had asked for nothing but his trust. And when she needed his protection most, he had chosen his mother's fear over his wife's love. If you believe in stories that teach, inspire, and shake you awake, hit that subscribe button right now. This one will change how you see love, pride, and worth forever. 18 months before that frozen doorstep, Harlan Cross had been a completely different man. The kind who believed in forever and meant it when he said those words. It started in a cramped downtown diner at 2 a.m. Harlan sat hunched over blueprints, his 3rd cup of coffee growing cold, when the nurse approached his booth. She was on her break from the hospital across the street, still wearing her scrubs under a worn winter coat. Most people would have rushed through the refill, but this stunning woman with gentle eyes, actually looked at his work. "The foundation seems off," she said quietly, studying his drawings. "If you shifted the support beam here, wouldn't that distribute the weight better?" Harlan looked up, startled. She was right. Completely right. And when he started explaining the structural challenges he was facing, something magical happened. She listened. Really listened. Not with polite interest, but with genuine curiosity. "I'm sorry." He laughed after explaining load-bearing calculations for 10 minutes. "You probably think I'm crazy." "People don't get passionate about things that don't matter," Seraphina replied, refilling his cup. "It means you care about building something that lasts." That night turned into dawn. Dawn turned into daily meetings at the diner when her shifts ended. Daily meetings turned into walks through the city, where Harlan would point out architectural details, and Seraphina would ask questions that showed she was building a map of his dreams in her mind. She was brilliant in ways that had nothing to do with her nursing degree. She understood people, understood what made them feel secure or vulnerable. She could look at his building plans and see not just structures, but homes where families would feel safe. 8 months later, he proposed with a ring that cost him 2 paychecks and hands that shook so badly he nearly dropped it twice. They were standing in the same diner where they'd met, and when she said yes, the entire night shift cheered. "I know it's not much," he whispered, sliding the modest diamond onto her finger. "It's everything," she whispered back, and he knew she meant it. The wedding was small, courthouse ceremony. Just them and 2 witnesses pulled from the hallway. Seraphina wore a simple white dress she'd bought that morning, and Harlan couldn't stop staring at her like she was made of starlight. When the judge pronounced them married, she cried happy tears that made her mascara run, and Harlan thought he was the luckiest man alive. During her pregnancy, he became the husband every woman dreams of. He'd wake up early to make her ginger tea for morning sickness before her hospital shifts. He'd rub her feet when she came home exhausted from 12-hour days caring for other people. Every night, he'd place his hands on her growing belly and whisper to their babies about the life he was going to give them. "Hello, little ones," he'd murmur against her skin. "Daddy's building you the most beautiful nursery. Your mama picked out yellow paint because she says surprises are the best kind of gifts." Seraphina would run her fingers through his hair, watching him with such pure love it took her breath away. This was the man she'd fallen for. Protective, gentle, devoted. The man who saw her worth when she couldn't see it herself. But there were things she couldn't tell him. Phone calls she'd end abruptly when he walked into the room, her face going pale. Questions about her family that she'd deflect with jokes or subject changes. The way she'd flinch when expensive things came up in conversation, like wealth, was a wound that hadn't healed. "Where is your family?" Harlan asked one evening, noticing they'd been married 8 months and he'd never met a single relative. "It's complicated," was all she'd say, curling into his arms. "You're my family now." He wanted to believe that was enough. For a while it was, but his mother noticed the gaps. Victoria Cross had a talent for finding cracks and prying them wider. Every family dinner became an interrogation disguised as concern. "It's just unusual, darling," she'd tell Harlan when Seraphina was working late at the hospital. "No background checks, no family history. She could be anyone. Don't you think a wife should trust her husband with the truth?" The seeds of doubt were planted months before they bloomed into destruction. Victoria would point out every inconsistency. Every moment Seraphina seemed uncomfortable with questions about her past. "Women like her know exactly what they're doing," his mother would whisper. "She saw a good man with potential and locked him down. Mark my words, she's been planning this from the beginning." And then the twins came early, at 37 weeks, and everything Harlan feared became louder than everything he loved. Seraphina sat on a bus stop bench 4 blocks from the house she'd called home, snow collecting on the blankets wrapped around her babies. Her phone had 1% battery left, and her fingers were so numb she could barely dial. She'd walked as far as her healing body could carry her, and now she had nowhere else to go. She pressed the number she'd memorized but never called. A number she'd sworn she'd never use again. It rang twice before dying completely, the screen going black. But that was enough. 18 minutes later, she heard the engines. Not one vehicle. 3 black luxury SUVs moved down the street with precision, their headlights cutting through the snowfall. They pulled up in formation, one directly in front of her, 2 flanking positions, and doors opened simultaneously. Men in expensive coats emerged, moving with the kind of coordination that spoke of military training and serious money. But their faces weren't cold or threatening. They looked relieved, worried, like they'd been searching for something precious and finally found it. The passenger door of the lead vehicle opened, and an older man stepped out. Tall, distinguished, with silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled with emotion when he saw her. "Sarah," he said softly, and there was a lifetime of love in that one word. "Uncle James." Her voice broke completely. He crossed to her in 3 swift strides, but his approach was gentle, careful not to jostle the babies. "My dear girl, we've been looking for you for years." "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I wanted something real. Something that wasn't about the money." "And you found it," he said, looking down at the twins with wonder. "You found love and made a family. I'm proud of you." One of the security team approached with equipment that made sense now: infant car seats, blankets, even a portable heater. James noticed her confusion. "We've had tracking on your phone for 3 years, he explained gently. "We never interfered because you asked for space, but we've always been ready. When your phone connected to our network tonight, even briefly, we knew you needed us." As the team efficiently but tenderly transferred the babies to the professional car seats, Seraphina felt a wave of exhaustion hit her. For 2 days, she'd been alone with her pain and confusion. Now, surrounded by people who'd loved her since childhood, the weight of it all came crashing down. "The babies," she said weakly. "They'll need." "Everything they need is already arranged," James assured her. "The best pediatricians in the city are on standby. Your old room at the estate has been prepared as a nursery. We've been ready for you to come home for 3 years, Sarah. We've been ready for anything." One of the team members helped her into the heated vehicle, while another secured the twins. As they pulled away from the curb, James handed her a thick blanket and a thermos of hot tea. "Tell me what happened," he said quietly. "He didn't trust me," she whispered, staring out at the snow. "I thought I'd found someone who could love me without knowing about the money. But when it came down to it, he thought I was using him." "His loss," James said firmly, "and our gain. The Foundation has missed you, Sarah. The world has missed what you bring to it." 4 blocks away, Harlan stood at his living room window, watching the convoy of vehicles with growing dread. When Seraphina had walked out into the snow, he'd expected. What? That she'd call a friend, take a cab to some cheap motel, struggle, and prove his point about her desperation. He hadn't expected this. The way those men moved around her, protective, deferential, like she was something infinitely valuable. The equipment they'd brought, as if they'd been planning for this exact scenario. The older man who embraced her like she was his whole world. What's all the commotion? Victoria Cross appeared beside him, peering through the curtains. "I don't know," Harlan said quietly, but his stomach was twisting into knots. "Probably just drama," his mother dismissed. "You know how these people are. always making a scene. But as Harlan watched the convoy pull away, smooth, professional, expensive, one thought kept echoing in his mind. If she had no one, who came for her like that? Not neighbors offering help. Security, not friends with hand-me-downs. Professionals with equipment, not random. Prepared. The vehicles disappeared into the night, taking his wife and children with them. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Harlan wondered if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. The house felt empty now. Not just quiet, empty, like something vital had been ripped out of it, leaving only shadows and regret. "Well," Victoria said, brushing imaginary dust off her hands, "that's that then. Now you can find someone suitable." But Harlan wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at the spot where the convoy had been, his heart hammering with a terrible certainty that he'd just destroyed something precious beyond measure, something he might never get back. Word traveled fast in their small town. By Monday morning, everyone knew that Harlan Cross had thrown his wife and newborn twins out into a December snowstorm. The details varied with each telling, but the core remained the same. A man had chosen cruelty over compassion when his family needed him most. At the coffee shop where he used to grab his morning espresso, conversation stopped when he walked in. The barista, who used to smile and ask about Seraphina, now avoided eye contact. In the hardware store, men who had once slapped his back and called him a good guy now studied their feet when he passed. Harlan wasn't the hard-working husband anymore. He was the man who kicked out a woman with newborn twins in a snowstorm. And in a town where everyone knew everyone, that reputation was a death sentence. He tried calling her phone obsessively. The first day, it rang. The second day, it went straight to voicemail. By the third day, the number was disconnected entirely. He sent text after text to her old number anyway, desperate words tumbling from his fingers. "Please, talk to me. I didn't understand. I know who you are now. I know what I did. I'm sorry. God, Sarah, I'm so sorry." But silence was his only answer, because love cannot survive contempt. And contempt was exactly what he'd shown her in those final moments, looking at the woman who'd given him everything and seeing only deception. His work began to suffer. Projects that should have taken days stretched into weeks. He'd sit at his drafting table, staring at blank paper, unable to concentrate. His hands shook when he tried to draw. His clients started asking questions he couldn't answer. The worst moments came at night, when he'd walk past the nursery he'd spent months preparing. 2 cribs stood side by side, painted yellow because Seraphina had said surprises were the best kind of gifts. A stuffed rabbit sat in one corner, the first toy he'd bought, the day they found out it was twins. He'd stand in that doorway and remember fragments of conversations that now felt like prophecies. She had made him feel safe enough to be completely himself. She had listened to his dreams about building homes where families would feel secure. And when it mattered most, when she needed that same safety from him, he had made her the most unsafe person in the world. The nights became unbearable. He'd lie in their bed, his bed now, and replay every moment of their relationship through the lens of what he now knew. Her quiet phone calls hadn't been scheming. They'd been her trying to manage a charitable empire while living a normal life. Her reluctance to talk about her past hadn't been deception. It had been protection. She had given up billions to love him authentically. She had chosen their small apartment over mansions, his modest income over unlimited wealth, his simple dreams over a legacy of power. And he had repaid that sacrifice by accusing her of using him. The weight loss started in the second week. Food tasted like ash. Sleep came in fragments. He'd catch glimpses of himself in mirrors and barely recognize the hollow-eyed stranger staring back. Love isn't proven in the easy seasons. Love is proven when you're tired, scared, embarrassed, or uncertain, and you choose kindness anyway. Harlan had failed that test spectacularly. When fear whispered in his ear, when doubt crept into his heart, when his mother's poison found fertile ground in his exhaustion, he had chosen suspicion over trust, pride over humility, judgment over love. And now he was paying the price for that choice, one sleepless night at a time. If this story is hitting you in the chest right now, you're not alone. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe, because these stories, they change lives. 3 months after that December night, a letter arrived. Harlan found it slipped under his front door on a Tuesday morning. Thick, cream-colored paper that felt expensive between his fingers. No return address, but he knew that handwriting instantly. The graceful script he'd watched form grocery lists and birthday cards and love notes tucked into his lunch bag. His hands shook as he opened it. Dear Harlan, I'm alive. The twins are warm. They are loved. I won't contact you again after this. Not because I hate you. I could never hate the man who gave me our children, but because some bridges burn so completely that even the memory of crossing them becomes dangerous. I want you to know that I won't punish you with revenge. I won't use lawyers, or money, or influence to hurt you the way you hurt me. Life will teach you what my silence could not. What happened that night wasn't about trust or timing or even fear. It was about respect. Love without respect is not love. It's a lesson. And the lesson you taught me was that when you looked at me, you saw someone capable of manipulation, deception, and using innocent babies as weapons. That tells me everything I need to know about how little you actually knew the woman you married. I loved you with everything I had. I chose you over a fortune, over family expectations, over a life of ease and certainty. I chose you because you saw me in a diner and listened like my thoughts mattered. I chose you because you made me feel safe enough to share what I cared about. But when I needed that same safety from you, you gave me something else instead. I hope someday you understand what you lost. Not the money. You never cared about that anyway. But you lost a woman who would have spent her life making sure you never doubted your worth. You lost children who would have grown up thinking their father hung the moon. Most importantly, I hope you become the kind of man our children would feel safe calling Dad. Because if you do, if you really do the work to become worthy of that title, then maybe this nightmare will have served some purpose. Take care of yourself, Harlan. Cold seasons don't last forever. Seraphina. Harlan read the letter 3 times before his legs gave out. He sank onto his front steps, the paper trembling in his hands, and for the first time since that December night, he cried. Not angry tears or frustrated tears, but the deep, wrenching sobs of a man who finally understood the magnitude of what he'd destroyed. She hadn't threatened him. She hadn't mentioned her billions, or her power, or her ability to make his life difficult. She hadn't even demanded child support. She had simply told him the truth with devastating clarity. He had looked at the woman who loved him most and seen an enemy. The spring air was warm around him, but Harlan still felt that December cold in his bones. Some seasons don't live outside. They live inside you, freezing every good memory, making every warm moment feel like a lie you told yourself. He folded the letter carefully and went inside to the empty house that would never feel like home again. Here's what makes this story so devastating, and why it should shake every one of us to our core. The coldest part wasn't that Seraphina's fortune was worth billions. The coldest part wasn't that Harlan threw away generational wealth. The coldest part was that she once looked at him like he was enough, completely, perfectly enough, and he traded that kind of love for pride. Think about that for a moment. A woman who could have had anything, anyone, anywhere in the world looked at an architect in a small town and said, "You, I choose you." She saw him struggling over blueprints in the early morning hours and thought, "This is the man I want to build a life with." She walked away from billions because she believed he was worth more than money could buy. And when she stood in his doorway that December night, exhausted and bleeding and holding their newborn children, she was still choosing him, still believing in the man she'd fallen in love with, still hoping he would choose love over fear. He told her to go. Harlan thought he was protecting himself from being used. Instead, he discovered too late that the richest thing he ever had was standing in his doorway, asking to come home. And he slammed the door in her face. Here are the lessons that should burn into your heart from this story. Never judge someone's worth by what you can see on the surface. Seraphina worked as a nurse and lived in a small apartment, but she carried the responsibility for hospitals, schools, and disaster relief across 6 continents. The people who love you quietly are often the ones carrying the most. She never bragged about her wealth because she wanted to be loved for who she was, not what she had. Respect is not optional in love. It's the foundation. You can say, "I love you" all day long, but if you don't respect someone enough to trust their character, you're not loving them. You're using them. Pride will cost you everything if you let it sit in the driver's seat. Harlan's ego couldn't handle the possibility that his wife might be hiding something, so he chose suspicion over faith and lost his entire family in one night. If this story moved you, do me a favor, hit like, drop a comment with the lesson that hit you hardest, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Love Stories with Mr. Tyrell. Because we're not just telling stories here, we're changing hearts. We're reminding people that love is about trust, respect, and choosing grace over fear. We're showing that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. They can only be earned through character. I'll see you in the next one.